as it can work for this for all the papers and such. Please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll call the meeting to order of the June 16th City Council special meeting at 6 o'clock. And can we start with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Larson. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Larson is absent. Councilmember Cassidy.
Here.
Councilmember Downhon. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Downhon is not present. And he does have a link to appear online, but I don't see anyone there. So
Yeah, he mentioned he'd likely be busy with the fires. They're long days.
great. Councilmember Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble. Present. Councilmember Josh Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor White.
Also present.
You have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Great to have folks in the audience. Thank you. Especially, I know a lot of folks are here for the acknowledgement of the advancement of our officers. Great to have you here. We appreciate that. We need to have approval of the agenda, please. Get a motion in a second. Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox with a second by Councilmember Cassidy. We can't amend this agenda because it's a special meeting. So with that, we'll call for the question. Councilmember Cassidy.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Great. And that passes. Great. First up is our new business non-action items. So Chief and Adam, first up is administer the oath of office and swear in David Milovich as Sergeant for the Lander Police Department.
Why? The podium hides my legs shaking. Mayor, Council, thank you for giving us your time tonight. We'll start with Corporal Milovich, David Milovich. He's worked for the Lander Police Department. He's currently a corporal. I've said it 100 times and I'll say it every chance I get. I believe that one of the most important things that I do as the chief of police is hire the right people and promote the right people. Both of these gentlemen being sworn in tonight, they're promoted, took part in a process. As you know, I believe in processes. I believe in subjective processes. Each of them were assigned a book to read. David was assigned strength-based leadership, as well as the big, bad, beautiful policy manual that all of you guys had to go through. They were tasked with reading the book, reading the policy, and taking a written test to move on to an oral board. The difference between the two candidates that applied for sergeant was less than 1 point. So they took this very serious. David's here with his wife, Betsy. He's lived 24 years of his life in Fremont County. They have 12-year-old Justin, 9-year-old Nova Lee. Next month will be 9 years of service for David in law enforcement with RPD, Broomfield, and LPD. David is one of our FTOs. He's a TASER instructor. He's an SFST instructor and one of our brand new Gracie instructors. So he's devoted a lot of time and effort to be a part of Lander.
Raise your right hand, please, after me. I state your name.
I do
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and Lander City Ordinance,
and Landers ordinance,
that I will discharge the duties
that I will discharge the duties
of my office as Sergeant of the Lander Police Department.
as
I'll repeat that. Discharge the of my office
discharge the duties of my office
as Sergeant of the Lander Police Department,
as Sergeant of the Lander Department,
Fidelity,
Fidelity,
that I have not paid
that I have not paid
or contributed
or
or promised to pay
promised to pay
or contribute
or contribute
either directly or indirectly
either directly or indirectly
money or other valuable thing
money or other valuable thing
to procure my nomination
for my nomination
or election
or election
or appointment,
or appointment,
except for necessary and proper
that are necessary and proper
expenses expressly authorized by law.
and proper law,
That I have not knowingly
that have not knowingly
violated any election of law
violated any law
of the state or procured it again by others
or contributed to
on my behalf.
Mine.
That I will not knowingly,
that have not knowingly
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly
money or other valuable thing,
money or other valuable
performance or non-performance
performance or non-performance
of any act or duty
of any act or duty
pertaining to my office
pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
compensation of office.
Congratulations. Kelly, next time get a longer vote. Make it way more complicated. Sign.
The second officer tonight, I'm going to give you a little bit more history on, just because you've met David before. David's been in front of you before. You have a little history of David. You have yet to meet Casey, so I think it's important that you understand who Casey is and where he came from. Casey began his law enforcement career in 2011 with Niobrara County Sheriff's Office. In 2012, he transferred to the Fremont County Detention Center, where he gained valuable experience. After several years in detention services, Casey transitioned to the patrol with the Riverton Police Department, expanding his law enforcement experience through proactive policing, special response team, and the community engagement team for Riverton. In 2021, Casey joined the Lander Police Department, where he's continued to serve with the utmost professionalism, dedication, and commitment to public safety. Throughout his 15 years in law enforcement, he's consistently sought opportunities to enhance his skills and contribute to the development of fellow officers. Casey was the one recently recognized by the Governor's Council for the DUI Task Force and the work that he's done to have an impact on impaired driving. Casey also holds several instructor certifications with us. He's a custody and control instructor, an ECIR instructor, and most recently became a level 1 Gracie survival tactics instructor as well. He's also a nationally certified use of force expert instructor. Casey's here with his wife, Ashley, and their children. Between the two of them, they have 5 children together. Ashley also works for the Fremont County Prosecutor's Office, so their entire family is law enforcement. I would like to bring Casey and his family forward to be promoted.
Ready?
Do you need some water?
I state your name.
I, Casey Catawba,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and Lander City Ordinance,
and Lander City Ordinance,
that I will discharge
that I will discharge
of my office
the duties of my office
as corporal, Lander Police Department.
as corporal of the Lander Police Department with fidelity.
I have not paid
That I have not paid
or contributed
or contributed
or promised to pay or contribute
or promised to pay or contribute
either directly or indirectly
either directly or indirectly
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
near my nomination
here
necessary and proper expenses
except for necessary and proper expenses
expressly authorized by law,
expressly authorized by law,
that I have not knowingly
that I have not knowingly
violated any election of law
any election of law
of the state
of the state
or procured it to be done by others
or procured it to be done by others
on
my behalf,
that I will not knowingly receive,
that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
money or other valuable
any money or other valuable thing,
performance or non-performance
with performance or non-performance
of an act
of the act
or duty pertaining
or any duty pertaining to
to my office
my office
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
Photo bomb.
Spot for this to happen. Let folks get settled. Thank you for that, Chief. So the next item here, the presentation of the FBI Director's Letter to Chief Watt. We can't actually do that, it turns out, in a public meeting like that. They came earlier this afternoon to do that. There's rules from the FBI about being in public and elected official position. So it was very nice, though, to have that presentation from Director Patel to Chief Waugh for his appointment as the Lander police chief. And it was great to have a conversation with those folks about the partnership between the city of Lander and FBI. And Chief, I'm going to call on you to give a little overview about the value of that and what it brings to the Lander Police Department.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify that the FBI has a very strict policy on any of their SACs interacting directly with elected officials. So it was their decision not to have it here at City Council. Some of the things we've been working on, there's a new supervisor in Lander. His name's Justin Kempf. He was here many years ago. He's been reassigned to Lander. We've been building partnership with the FBI, working on some task force operation stuff to get our staff sworn in with the FBI. The value of that is Title 18 and Title 21, which is the laws and rules that they enforce on the reservation. The FBI has a plan this summer to ramp up investigations on the outskirts of the reservation, which would include our community of Lander as well as Riverton, DuBois. They want to work a lot on the overflow of the crime from the reservation into our communities. So Mr. Kemp and myself have had multiple meetings and sat down and building a plan to build a partnership with us so we can help them and then they can help us. If we get some of our guys task force authorized through the reservation, we not only lend a little bit of our people to them, they cover any of overtime incurred expenses. They take care of anything when they're on the reservation. The professional development that does for our staff laterally is second to none. And the investigation and the experience that they'll get, what we get in return is the entire Bureau of Investigation. We get all of their availability with anything that they have, whether it's tactical, whether it's computer crimes, whatever they have, if we are sworn in with them, we get all of that access to us for free. So that's kind of where this came from, is we're just building a relationship to work with the FBI. They're in our community. As we all know, the federal government has latitude of multiple things for investigations and solving crimes and information seeking that we don't have here. So we're spending a lot of time with them trying to build this partnership.
Thank you for that. All right, next up, and I see Mr. Fables here in the audience with us. So acknowledgement of the Lander Chamber of Commerce notice of termination of the MOU between our two entities and the return of the lodging tax administration. Mr. Fable, did you want to come up and make any statement about that, or are you good just in observation? Why don't you come up and just give us a brief overview of where you see the chamber going and thoughts behind this. I know we will continue to be partners, but not necessarily in that formal way.
Sure. Mayor and council, on April 30th, I believe we submitted a letter indicating termination of the MOU that was currently in place, as well as returning of the lodging tax to the city. Our intent with this is we believe that public funds should be in public hands. We're not a public entity. So that was the main intent behind that, and just wanted to move forward in good governance, making sure that we were doing the things we were best at, and cities doing the things that the public entities best at. So
Thank you. I appreciate that and appreciate your sense of public funds staying in with public entities for that. Any questions for Mr. Fable while we have him here?
Not a
Member
question,
Stable.
but if I could just, make a comment, acknowledge, thank you, Mr. Fable. I mean, we've had, many years of partnership with the chamber, and I'm excited to read, in your letter and in your intentions, our conversations that, the MOU is being exited, but like that partnership is not. So that the visitor center is can continue to be a visitor center. We're going to maintain a lot of shared goals and deep conversation, I hope, as we, try to work together for Lander's future, what's best for our businesses and what the city can do to further those goals too. So it seems, like, oh, we're saying no to, exiting the MOU here, but hopefully that's just a formal step, but the actual collaboration and partnership not only continues, but is, enriched. Thank you.
Just have a quick comment. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that, Councilman Stubble. One thing that I would like to acknowledge too, in acknowledging this, is the level of communication that's coming out of the chamber as you've started. I appreciate that. I know other council members have commented and appreciate that as well. It keeps us up to date, and then we're not surprised by things, and that really does help build, foster relationships through the city and businesses. So thank you for that intentional work in your communication.
Yeah, I'll echo that again. While that particular MOU is no longer in place, I know the partnership will continue, and we both want and need it to continue, because we both have roles to play in the economic strength and future of our community. And so I want that partnership to continue for that. So thank you very much. One thing for council as well to note, next week, most likely, is when we'll have this, because we will, at least for this coming fiscal year, be administering the TAT grant. We need to create a new line item in our budget for that. And the best practice, the most transparent practice, is for us to answer to the auditors that yes, it was with council approval that a new line item was created. So you can expect to see that probably next week, possibly not until the July 1st meeting. So, but thank you, Mr. Fable. Appreciate you coming here, and appreciate again that we'll have continued partnership no matter what. So,
thank you.
Thanks for being here. Okay, next up at 6:19, we'll open the public hearing, utility rates for water and wastewater service fiscal year 2026 to 27. So I think the way we had it is, Rochelle, you're going to do the brief overview in a little more detail from Lance for that.
So this public hearing was advertised. It was originally advertised for last week. And then when the mayor indicated that there would be a change, I did get it advertised in the newspaper showing there was a change and that it would be tonight. And those notices were in the packet as well. The essence of this public hearing is in the packet under a resolution. And with that, I'll let Lance talk about the more specifics of the changes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We're recommending the 7% increase in water and 9% in sewer. So two different prices. Sewer is significantly under as far as a rate underwater, even though they have parallel infrastructure in the streets. Then we're seeing significantly increased costs at water treatment at the sewer facility. So we're anticipating that nutrients and ammonia, per our conversations with the DEQ and EPA, are going to be a big project for us in the future, as well as a headwork structure for separation of trash. And so this continues to move along the idea in your pillar 2, infrastructure and core services to maintain critical infrastructure and then to address deferred maintenance. So a lot of these pipes are the ductile iron pipes that we're targeting in the water replacement projects that are starting to go on us. They're deteriorating in the clay soils. They're undersized for fire flows. So addressing those, as well as addressing sewer infrastructure that's failing and leaking, additional water getting into the system. So this continues to operate on the current plan of getting the projects that we've outlined in our loans to perform and do. I'm going to try to take Fifth Street back in because it's a transmission line for water, for seeing if we can get water development grant on that project. So if we could get 50% of the water line, that could be additional savings and would get us closer to the goal of being able to perform all the projects that are currently on the docket, and then look forward to the next group of projects that we have to do after that. So things have gotten much more expensive in the construction world. So we're just trying to find a way to construct as much infrastructure as we can that needs replacement and keep up with our regular maintenance.
Great. Thanks for that overview. We'll move on to public comment. Anyone who wants to speak specifically on this topic, come on up to the microphone at the podium there. You do need to lean pretty close to it in order for the recording and anyone online to be able to hear. If anyone wants to come up for public comment on this. Okay, not seeing any moving towards it. Council will be able to discuss this when it's our voting topic. So at 6:22, we'll close the public hearing. Next up is communication from the floor. Please approach the microphone, state your full name for the record. This meeting and comments are electronically recorded, and all comments here will be limited to 3 minutes. Since I can't see the clock, typically Regine lets me know, but then I'll raise my hand or just say thank you when you're at your 3 minutes. But anyone wants to come up, come on up, please. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
In my opinion, a vote in favor of Resolution 1390 is a vote against the health, welfare, and safety of Lander's children. Tragically, the adults of Lander are once again on the verge of voting to possibly put our children in harm's way, put them in grave danger. Tonight, you adults will be voting on Resolution 1390, which, if passed, would allow people to ignite fireworks while drinking from open containers of alcohol in the presence of children. I can hardly believe I'm even reading such, but that's it. Tonight, under new business, I found not to consider, but simply to approve Resolution 1390, authorizing open containers on July 4th, 2026, within the Lander city limits, as if it were some kind of foregone conclusion, a done deal. On a 4th of July, Rosie and I, as my wife, we sat up on Cemetery Hill overlooking Landers fireworks. It was awesome. But as we sat there enjoying the fireworks, we also witnessed fire trucks being dispatched to 3 different fires. In addition, we later learned that the hospital's emergency room had been full of fireworks-related injuries, including injuries sustained by children. Open containers of alcohol should never be mixed with fireworks. Just because leaders over 40 years ago manifested a gross lack of common sense and a total disregard for the safety of children does not mean that you, our current leaders, have to feel compelled to continue the obviously uncaring, lack of common sense, extremely dangerous tradition. Just because Lander has done something terribly dangerous for over 40 years does not mean that the Lander of 2026 has to continue doing the same irresponsible thing. Alcoholic families need to break the cycle, and alcoholic cities likewise need to have the courage and strength to break the cycle of alcohol-related child endangerment. In my opinion, anyone who votes in favor of approving Resolution 1390 is simply not putting the health, welfare, and safety of children first. Lander's obvious and terrible addiction to alcohol needs to be seriously addressed. Our children are too precious. Our children are too important. Our children are too valuable. A vote in favor of Resolution 1390 is bad for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woolwine. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to mayor and council updates, starting with you, Councilmember Cassidy.
Nothing for this period due to travel.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cox.
I also don't have any updates this time.
Okay, Councilmember Stubble.
Well, Mayor, my boards have not met, but I will just share, I've been really grateful for a variety of conversations in town with business owners and business leaders, with residents inquiring about the utility rates increase that we'll consider tonight as well. And so this is a kind of conversation engagement that I think helps us make much better decisions and truly know that we're representing, the folks in Lander and those who are part of the community but are outside the city limits as well. So I'm always excited to chat with people, listen and learn. So please contact me at any time and I'll be doing my best to be out and about as much as possible. And lastly, Mayor, I'll just say it's a couple weeks now past filing, but it's our first update, I think. So thanks to all the candidates who are running for office as well. I really truly believe in voters having a range of choice and having that robust debate in the community about a variety of issues, hearing those different perspectives. It's what makes our government run better, is to have informed voters and candidates willing to step forward and serve and have debate on the issues. And I look forward to working with whoever is elected, in November. So thanks to those who are putting their name out there and going to forums and debates, and to those who are going to vote.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Hahn.
No new updates. I do have a question though on the, I'm going to bring up the pool real quick. I noticed we got 25,000 in the budget.
Correct.
So are we going to create a new MOU with the Fremont County School District? And possibly meetings to try and figure out a way to keep the pools where it's sustained revenue, where they can create enough revenue to keep going without the shortfalls?
That's a great question. And I was going to give a little bit more update on that as well. At least part of it, if you don't mind me jumping in on that. So I continue to have conversations with Superintendent Harris. We were on the phone yesterday for about 40 minutes. Some of the things that I'd hoped to share tonight with both the public and council, he'd asked I please not share. School board has a meeting tonight, and he would prefer to have some of those conversations first with the school board, which I totally respect and so will abide by. Big picture, absolutely yes. We all recognize the pool is critical to all components of the Lander community, not the least of which the school, but learn to swim, drown proofing, a fitness option, all of those kinds of things. And also recognizing that the funding shortfall currently is quite substantial with, it's in the neighborhood of 400,000. So even if we were to return to our previous funding model, that still doesn't close the gap nearly enough. So exactly what that looks like, I don't know, still to be determined. So first, we'll have the school board meet. One of the things that I believe there is on their agenda is whether or not they adopt the proposed new schedule, and then anticipation of what that does to their revenue stream and minimizing expenses. But really, I would say the two big things from our continued conversations with Fremont. One is we are going to continue to work collaboratively for this, not just our two entities, but we need the community participation as well. We know it's too big for any single entity to do, and that we're also both confident that our community will rise to the challenge for that. So I'm sorry I can't give you great specifics on that, other than to reiterate the intent is certainly we value the pool. We want it to continue functioning as best we possibly can make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I
Mayor,
appreciate you asking.
If I may, I think Councilman Han did ask about the mechanism for distributing our 25K. Can you
Correct.
comment on that, please?
Only-ish at this point. So that was also part of the conversation of where would that best be used? Can it be used to extend hours, or is it really because of the funding gap? It should simply be used to help offset the current funding. There's a question about whether or not there would be a kind of scholarship fund for, especially for families, if they're unable to afford the new season or year-long pass. So we need to get more information from Mr. Superintendent Harris about where the school board goes and then how we can best plug in our funds for that. So,
And
yeah.
Mayor, at the risk of it becoming a conversation debate, so just, put your hands over for a minute. But I think again, the mechanism for it. So Councilman Han asked about, is this an MOU? I think I understand maybe a resolution. It's the mechanism we're looking at. I think it's a one-time payment. For now.
Exactly. Right now, it would likely be a resolution with where we would hope how the funds are spent.
That's right.
And so waiting to have continued conversations with the school district about what that looks like. So thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Cox, did you have?
I just think as follow-up, maybe getting this on the agenda just in reference to what our role is, and not, and maybe separating it out so that we understand where the city's impact is. And then, so we have an opportunity to discuss it via an agenda item.
Okay, so one option that we've talked about is also, unfortunately, Superintendent Harris is out of town next week for our next meeting, but there's a possibility of Mr. Sweeney being able to come and fill us in on what's transpired to date so far. So not necessarily a work session, but at least a way of showing that we are in continued conversation. We continue to work collaboratively together for that. So great. So that was going to be one of my updates for that. Also was able to go to the summer WAM conference last week, which was great. Again, always for networking, being able to learn a lot. There's great workshops out there. A big one that a lot of communities are wrestling with is how to manage public comment and if to have public comment. And I really appreciate that we do not have that concern. We have folks come, they speak, everything's civil. Thank you very much for that. I also did share for them, I don't know if council you're aware, but we have both created and promoted a social media policy because we had an individual who, while we absolutely understand there will be dissenting opinions, this individual was vulgar, profane, and threatening very repeatedly, and that's not appropriate. We welcome dissenting opinions, but we can't have individuals threatening our staff and using vulgar language. So we created a social media policy, and that is now up on all of our city pages for that. So, and a lot of communities don't have that, so it's nice to be able to offer that for that. And then also, I know one of our concerns from our residents is about why do we have like our water master plan and these water studies for things. One of the sessions we had was with a panel of representatives from the different entities that help us fund our water, and they reiterated, if you don't come with a plan, there is no way we're going to provide funding for you. We need to know that you've got it well designed, well crafted with what the cost is going to be, not too little, not too much, and that's mandatory for that. So I know it's a source of frustration for folks in our community about why we do those things, but that's why we have to be able to have those external funding sources for it. So,
Add
Yep.
a comment. Sorry about that. I should have done this at my time. But one thing that came up last week was, and it just resonated with me when you were talking about that, is communication. And so I wanted to address just briefly what I think might be helpful and maybe a hindrance in our particular case. We have some council members that are able to attend staff meetings, which I've talked to them about and I disagree with. Um, as a former government employee, I didn't always want my bosses to be at the meetings, but it's also valuable in communication stream. The problem is there's a little bit of an offset for those who get that information versus those who don't. So my suggestion is, or my thought behind that, I've shared some frustrations. I know other people have as well, of when we do staff reports, that's where those of us who are not able to attend are getting that information and how valuable that is. And some intention behind that too, because we're only getting a snapshot. And that is very important, but we also, you don't want to offset the people who have all the information versus the people that don't. And then there's it's not groupthink. It's like an opportunity to really hear what you're saying and then make good decisions based on that. I think that can be reflective in the agendas as well. And also, I know we had talked about doing business meetings always on the 2nd and 4th. And then so that we wouldn't have to have special meetings. Is that what's happening now? We're always doing a business meeting on the 2nd and 4th and in conjunction with a work session?
correct. We ended up having to call so many special meetings on the 4th because we had
Yeah.
time-sensitive voting items. And that requires the notice in the newspaper, the cost, the time, et cetera, for that. And since our ordinances already allow for it to simply be a regular meeting with non-action items and action items, that's what we're going with.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So we've
Yep.
already started
Correct.
that.
Yep.
Okay. And then I think just by way of staff, I've had some interactions that have been really positive, but also just better communication. I think that's important for myself and some other council members who find our work schedules to be a little bit more problematic to get down here, and just being very concise with the information, but also very intentional about what you need or what's out there. And we got a letter in this agenda packet that helped with that too, where there's some voting items that need to happen before a certain date. I find that to be helpful and I appreciate that. And that's what I'm talking about. That type of information that's necessary for us. Thank you for my soapbox.
No, all good information. Okay, so staff reports, you've got your marching orders. So be specific yet concise and more complete in what you're bringing to us.
I don't think it's fair that I'm the first one. I just want to touch with both of the people that were just promoted. We talked about Gracie survival tactics. That's probably some new terminology. Understand what that is the nation in law enforcement is going to a Gracie survival tactic, which is more of a jujitsu based training. The biggest push for me, I guess, for us at the Lander Police Department is that we have people that are involved in it, our instructors in it, and can teach our staff. As more agencies move to it, that's going to be the accepted practice as we go through with use of force incidents, control incidents. So I want us to be on top of what that national standard accepted rate is. So we actually have 4 of them that have gone through. Officer Borchardt, Officer Hansen, and then the 2 gentlemen tonight are all Gracie survival tactic instructors as of last week. Another with the partnerships, we're working with the FBI. We're also working with the U.S. Marshals. As you know, they have an office here. They have kindly opened some of their training to our staff to train with them. And where this conversation came from is, as we all know, unfortunately, the world's getting more violent and it happens lightning fast. And the reality of it is, in a major incident anywhere near or around Lander, everybody's going, regardless of the jurisdiction, regardless of the color of uniform, regardless if it's federal or state. So with Justin Kemp, myself, and the U.S. Marshals coming to the table, we're starting to train together, all of us, because there's going to be a day where we all have to respond to the same major incident. It's imperative that we've trained together before, been around each other before. We have 2 of our staff going next week to the U.S. Marshals in-service training to work with them directly on how they operate, what their tactics are. The cost of that for us is $25 per night, and then their meals. That's probably a 16th of the cost of sending them to a similar training put on by an instructor with motels, etc. We have the one opening. We currently have 7 applications. We have a preferred date by the end of this month. We're going to get moving on that. We're currently working amongst the staff on an e-bike ordinance that's making its rounds through us, through Adam, back and forth, just trying to get some things clarified before you see it. One thing I'd like to put on your radar is we are, with the assistance, kind of the direction of the National Guard, the Lander Police Department, Lander Fire, we're going to do an end of summer bash August 15th in the city park. We're going to bring in all the entities. It will be similar to mimic what a national night out looks like, but we want it in Lander so people can be at it in Lander. It's historically held in Riverton. We want to do our own in Lander, kind of at the end of the summer. We'll have prevention management there. We'll have the highway patrol there with the drunk goggles, just kind of some fun games, hot dogs, hamburgers, where they can see fire trucks, police cars. The National Guard is going to fly in a Black Hawk, let people rappel into the park for the kids to see. So kind of one last, close to the end of summer, reminder of who we are and the safety and different options that we can put forward for the kids. You saw we had our DUI task force here this weekend. I'll tell you, historically, in the 3 years I've been here, Brewfest generally we don't have problems with. We had 1 DUI throughout the entire weekend that was not directly related to the Brewfest. The DUI team that was here made 96 traffic stops in 8 hours and resulted in 0 DUIs, which is pretty impressive. The DUI command van that was in front of Mr. D's, we had that here last year. But we had it again this year. Just some history on that. The Cheyenne Police Department applied for a grant about 12 years ago to get that with the assistance of Highway Safety and WASCOP. So they technically own that. Part of the grant is there to deploy it throughout the state to 5 to 6 other communities throughout the year. They graciously chose us this year. I call and ask them, it doesn't cost the city of Lander directly money, the police department money. That's part of their grant. They operate all of that. They just come up here and more than anything, what they are, if you want to know the truth, is a big giant billboard that says, hey, we're out and about and we're watching. So the other thing, I've talked a little bit with Chief Koltiska in Sheridan. I've talked a little bit with Chief Francisco in Cheyenne in regard to the 4th of July parade. Councilman Josh Hahn and I had a conversation on the side of this year. I feel like our parade's going to be pretty epic, if you will, enormous, multiple floats. We're working on some outside the box. How do we help keep people away from the equipment and the floats and the things? So we're working on that. If you have any out of the box ideas, I'd love to hear them. I don't know what they are. If we had the magic answer, we would have fixed it before this year. Trust me, that's the one event that gives me a stomach ache in this position. But so we're actively working on that as well. Outside of that, I don't have anything else unless anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you, Chief, for bringing that up. I've spaced a million things going through my mind.
I'm all about follow-up, sir.
Yeah, public safety, man. You're on it. Thank you.
Mayor, if nobody has any questions, if I could kindly be excused, the Law Enforcement Collaboration Committee conference is in Lander today and tomorrow, and I am on that committee, and it's very happening and busy. If I would,
And
if
there's
it's
an
okay.
evening portion tonight, I know.
There's an
Yeah,
evening portion tonight that I would like to vacate to, if that's an acceptable thing.
totally understood. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thanks again for the promotions. Okay, Lance, you're up.
Yes, Mayor and Council, just a few different things. One of them that became a hot topic was utilities and franchises. As we had one of our franchises who decided to start installing fiber to houses, trying to provide additional service for our residents. A lot of questions on where ownership starts, stops, what's owned by the city, and where property corners are. And a lot of this came in the Sunset Edition, as far as having a sidewalk, kind of a 1 foot to 2 foot gap behind it, and a utility company who was shooting fiber in, and that landed in yards and other places. It was still the city's property, but there were sprinklers and other things within that right of way. Our franchises say anything within the public right of way will be restored to as good or better condition. So we have Visionary, who's doing this fiber install, held to that franchise. They're going to be here for a very long time. They want to offer services to the community, and they'll make sure things are right. But they hire contractors to do work for them who maybe weren't doing as good a job communicating or other things that we would like to see out as they're installing. Got a lot of questions as to why we weren't in the alley in this area. The reason being is that water and sewer is already in the alleys in this area versus in the streets. Most of the places in town, the water and sewers in the streets, and we get that 10-foot separation. In a 20-foot alley easement, when you end up having water, sewer, and then gas, and then overhead electric, it really reduces how much room we have without putting utilities on a layer above us. And so we have our replacement of some water line and sewer in the Sunset Edition. We're doing scoping and knowing that we need to be there, probably doing as much underground work as possible, looking at bursting those lines, but we don't want to deal with a fiber line over the top of us either. So as far as where to permit, we show people where our utilities are as they're planning a project, but as long as they're within a public right of way, the franchise enables them to do so. So just trying to give you guys a little more information. I know you're getting questions as to, what our permit process looks like, how construction begins, but we expect when a contractor begins a project that they have a good project manager, they're communicating their project with the public, and at the end of this, their goal is to sell their fiber service, so it makes sense for them to treat the customer well, or they're not going to get revenue back on their investment. So happy to answer any questions on that you guys may have.
Yep. Councilmember Cox.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Lance. I think for me, I appreciate that update, but I want to highlight maybe that the breakdown in communication came from the contractor, where they were supposed to notify property owners that this work was going to be happening, and they did not do so, is my understanding. And the city was not aware until it was happening. Is this?
Correct. We were given door hangers and, numbers to call and all of this information that should have gone on. They have to minimize their construction to the right of way unless they get permission from a property owner to go on their land. So when we saw some of the equipment being driven on property, I mean, that has to be completely coordinated with the property owner, given permission. And we don't know what those agreements look like, but we're only given permission for the public side of things. So our expectation was, yes, you are supposed to coordinate, contact, notify, and, those information we were given. So we found out that wasn't happening. And I believe it's better, but I still got a call today of somebody who had somebody in their yard, their sod had been dug up and they weren't talked to. So we're running down as the repeater in this, telling the contractor, like, how many times do we have to tell you, or do we have to hit pause and shut you down? Like, if you're not going to perform a good project here and stay within the right of way or breaking rules, but we have to hold them to the franchise is what we're looking at. And that doesn't have some of those very specific requirements. So we talked about maybe strengthening the permit for a franchise to require certain things. We have a form now, and maybe we can add some language that helps us be able to hit pause or stop on these projects, pull them in and say, hey, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. Your permit says that, so we're going to, shut you down until you're compliant.
Right. And I think, Mayor, thank you, Lance. I think too, that not allowing them to start until we know that the public has been informed. I mean, imagine you have equipment on your yard. I would not be happy either.
Yeah, me neither.
So And I know that's, I understand the breakdown and what happened there, but I don't know if there's a way we could strengthen that from our end, even as the governing body, to say, hey, this is some language we need to support you with in whatever capacity we can.
I think we're going to rework that permit and we'll talk about that in a work session when we come up with that language.
That sounds great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
That's where we've been looking at how we can have the most structure and enforceability is through the permit process. I mean, along those lines, Regina and I have talked about this a little bit, Lance, and I think this would be beneficial for council. About 6-ish years ago, we really dove into the project of finding out where all these things are. Believe it or not, we did not have great technology to know where all of our lines were. And Regina showed me a little bit about what's available now for where prescriptive power line easements are, sewer, water, internet, all of that. And I think it'd be beneficial for us to see this is one of the things that has happened in response to council guidance and how beneficial it is when folks have questions. So it's a pretty neat process to be able to show on a piece of property, here's where all these things are. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think that's all fascinating. It's also very confusing, and then we get into this like discussion as things are happening versus getting ahead of it. And I don't want to be in that position, or I don't like to be in that position. So I try to get ahead. And so just figuring out, like, that's cool stuff, but that's like boots on the ground. I want the 10,000-foot view of how does this impact our community and how can we ensure that they're aware of the impact.
Thank you for that. And another part of that, kind of the hurdle that we've run into in this is that a lot of landowners are unaware that there is either a right of way or an easement. And how can that be better communicated to folks? And back in the day, no one was paying attention to that. So irrigation lines, et cetera, were put in these places. And that's now we're running into those problems with it. So we'll keep getting smarter. Anything else for Lance, or Lance, anything? Councilmember Cassidy.
Lance, and you mentioned there just a few minutes ago, verbiage in future contracts to serve as like a trigger to kind of stop work, or to throttle it to make a correction and then allow it to proceed. Is there verbiage like that in the current project?
As far as the permit goes, I believe we have the leverage, but we also could end up having, without good reason, financial responsibility as to stopping work. So you're always careful to make sure that you have good reason and justification because contractors are here, people are paying them, and it's X amount of dollars per hour as they're working. So just making sure that we do have our I's dotted and T's crossed if we're going to issue stop work, and make sure that it is appropriate.
So perhaps we don't have a lever we can pull currently.
I think the current permit is pretty generic, and I think it needs to be strengthened.
Thanks.
Councilmember Hahn.
Oh, yes. Is there a clear answer on the, I don't know what you call it, the right of way, or what the city is allowed to dig on, like their portion? You got the sidewalk, which is owned by the city, correct, but the property owner maintains it. And then you have a certain amount behind the sidewalk. It's not 10 feet from the gutter to.
No, it varies all over town. And
Okay.
so it's truly by a property pin. And so if you can find it, or you can find your survey, some of it, sometimes in this area, it could be a foot, sometimes it could be 18 inches, but it's moving. When the developer built their roads and the sidewalks, they had that flexibility to be within that right of way. And so a lot of times they centered the road and then it's nice and even, but they didn't have to be.
Right.
But they dedicated, the portions that were the road and the sidewalk to the city, and then left property pins and what's behind it to the owner. And so it can vary, and sometimes right-of-way distances can vary. They could be 50 foot, 60 foot, 40 foot in different areas of town. So depending on the plat that was accepted, that that could be different in different areas.
Okay, so an individual could actually go to the courthouse, get their survey and make it see like if there was an easement on their property.
Yeah,
for-
and so the easements could be two different ways. There could be a plat easement, and so if you open up Fremont County GIS, you can actually see your plat. If you click on your parcel and click, what is that? Has to be on subdivision. And so if you get the subdivision layer on, click in there, you can open the plat. And the plat will show you if any utility easements were dedicated. And so sometimes there could be something that's, 10 foot off of side or 10 feet off the front behind those pins. It could be utility easement. That means a utility company or the city, power, gas, or water could technically use that easement as it was dedicated. But also easements could be truly agreements reached with a landowner at a different point in time. And so doing property research and going back and making sure that you have researched your parcel would be another way to find out if an easement exists on your property. So those are kind of the two different ways you can find out.
Great to know as a property owner, that
Yeah.
somebody can get in and kind of see what's allowed, what's not.
Yeah. And, we really want these utility companies to find these pins
Sure.
as they're looking and making sure that we can verify they're on the right side of them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question.
Okay, I have a few project updates. So airport is under a rebid. We did have a pre-bid meeting and there were 4 contractors that showed up to that versus just the one bid that was rejected previously. So we're hoping for more interest on the apron project coming up, but I would anticipate this late in the season that most of that construction would happen next summer or, spring to fall. Jefferson Street, we're anticipating hopefully done this month or early into July. So they're on track down by the park to get that. And if you guys haven't seen that construction, a lot of the millings that we've been putting aside, we've recycled those into mat. And so, we can always replenish millings with future projects, but finding good reuse to put that into asphalt pavement as well as put it down for our base. So it's a good project. Lincoln Street, I think it's going to run longer than July 4th. And so I would anticipate we're going to see this thing through where they're at now. They're crossing 9th intersection and they've got to get all the way to Main Street. And so hopefully for the 4th of July, they can consolidate on one block. They open up as many intersections as possible, pave as much as possible. So trying to push them into having a lot opened up and then consolidating their equipment to one area. And then Buena Vista is starting mid-July. So going to have the pre-construction meeting on that coming up here, I think the first part of July. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Lance on the projects? Okay. See none. Regine.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My staff updates are for other staff. And let me know that we have received 3 additional LORE grants. They weren't all sent to us, but we are the beneficiary of a supplies and equipment to create safe intersections around the Lander Middle School. So this was submitted by the Lander Middle School students. We're going to reconfigure traffic patterns, put in thermoplastic crossings and a flashing beacon to get that pedestrian pattern around the middle school fixed. We are the beneficiary of $26,400, and that's under the strategic plan to promote safe routes to schools. We have no outlay, zero outlay dollars for that. LORE Foundation also funded 100% of a shade structure at the Lander Dog Park. So some pet owners put this into LORE, and we will get a shade similar to what's at the current bike park. And that was a benefit to us of $9,973. That's under the strategic plan effort of maintaining our parks and rec. Another one that we got was $7,350 benefit. What are they called? Lander Presents asked for some upgrades and some shades and a few things on the city park state. So they were awarded that in full, and we will be the beneficiary of that. So those are the 3 LOR grants. And also let me know that 2 months ago, she put in a Wyoming Community Gas for FIBAR, which is the material they put around playgrounds. And we asked for 5,000. We were awarded 3,000, 0 outlay of dollars for the city. The next 2 are under the fire department. I don't know if all of you know this, but we were not awarded the $1 million fire truck, a grant that we had put into FEMA. So we put in another one to them. And we're asking for them to replace in their entirety 10-year-old air packs or self-contained breathing apparatus. This is under the strategic plan network of strength and disaster preparedness. That would be a benefit to us if awarded. This one's not awarded yet, of $446,500. Our match amount is $23,500. And that $23,500 would come out of the 50 that we've already budgeted for the fire truck, but we're not using. Okay. The last one for the fire department is a State Farm grant for Good Neighbor Firefighter Safety, and they requested $10,000 that would upgrade our hoses and all the fittings. And that is 0 outlay dollars for the city, and that's under the strategic plan of strength and disaster preparedness. So all of those were 0 outlay for city dollars, and they add up to quite a sizable benefit for the city.
That's awesome. We are going to miss Laura for sure.
We are going to miss Laura.
Yeah,
you are correct.
Disappointed about the fire truck, and also very glad we can update the air packs and hoses. So
yeah,
glad we can get funding in wherever we can.
And unless you have any other questions, I will pass it on.
I believe Councilmember Stubble has a question.
Well, thank you, Mayor White. Mr. Mayor, maybe not a question, but just punt it to somebody else since you're reporting for fire department, but it is too bad. I mean, that's very good news and very much too bad on the fire truck grant. I feel like we've applied for and not received that several times.
That's correct.
So Mayor, I don't know, we probably can answer tonight, like, is there something we can do to become more competitive on that? How do we resubmit and perhaps have a more positively received application? And it strikes me, Mayor, we haven't had an annual update from our fire chief, which we have had on the agenda. Yep. So maybe that's a conversation to have, a small piece of a conversation to have in a broader way with our fire department leadership as well. Knowing that grant application, I'm sure was a team effort with a lot of staff. I'm not trying to pin that, but I have been wanting to ask for a fire department update sometime. Good. And
so I can give you a little bit of an update, historical update anyway. We did receive one large of these AFG fire grants from FEMA while Nick Hudson was here. He actually volunteered to be an evaluator, and they sent him to a school. So he learned how to write their grants.
Okay.
And that's the last successful FEMA grant we got.
Okay.
So now we have either me writing grants or Chris writing grants, and we are not tuned in to what FEMA is looking for. So that may be part of our lack of success. The other part is the fire engine that they're asking for. Yes, it may be aged out in age, but it may not have enough miles, and we're falling behind other people on a national scale because these are national grants. So that just might be a little bit of insight.
Anything else? Okay, Christy.
Let me begin. One thing that I wanted to relay, since I was going to relay it tomorrow to staff, but I was going to let you know that I met with Meter Investments this Monday, and I brought Kevin Kulo also in there into that meeting with me. I think one of the goals, as I'm learning different things in my new position, I also want other people to always have a backup and have that same somebody else that you can go to if for some reason I wasn't here that would have that could get you through some of those questions. So we are looking at maybe repositioning some of our investments that can earn us some more income. We need to grow out that proposal. We're going to start giving him month-end balances. He's going to start putting together some information for us, and hopefully I can come back later to you all with a proposal. More money is always better. I right now kind of working on budget stuff. I pretty much have it all. I have all but the 1% fund in the actual Cassell. I'm looking to putting it in Airtable next. I'm also preparing for fiscal year end because that's June 30th. There's a lot that goes into that, things that Kevin and I have to keep track of. He's working on making a lot of changes in payroll. I'm working on identifying anything that really truly AP-wise should be reported in this fiscal year versus stuff that's next fiscal year when they crisscross into different areas. We want to get that right. And also preparing for what we need to start putting together for audit purposes. We're also working, I worked with Cassell on setting up a special revenue fund for the TAD. And then also reading through the GASB to make sure that we do everything appropriate there, which I think is one of the reasons why it sounds like we should probably have a special revenue fund. If we're going to create a new one for TAD, it should probably go through council. One of the other things I did was I've been in contact with the state lands and investments. I know this is the last action item or the last item on the agenda, and we can talk about it then. But I know that there were questions. One of the things I hear a lot in the community is that want us to be more transparent. So being transparent, I wanted to be able to, because there's a big jump between now and July 14th, June 9th to July 14th. We didn't want to pay some of the bills late. There were bills that we knew about that were large amounts, and we wanted to put that on there. And we can talk about that then, but in doing so, I think there were some questions that came about that, like what do we truly owe? What are our loans? Where are we at with them? So I did put together a schedule, and everybody should have that updated loan schedule that hopefully will help explain it, and we can go into that more detail when we get to that last action item. I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Chris?
Sorry, I'm
Councilmember Stubble.
froggy. I'm still getting over the flu.
Oh gosh. Thank you, Mayor. Good luck. Thank you for being here while you recover. I wanted to say a huge thank you and shout out a big improvement that you've been implementing with Mr. Kulo. And so on Friday, we all saw, I believe, as part of an email to staff that you've extended, you and Mr. Kulo have added some more guidance about adding project purpose and intent to the descriptions on expense entries that are going into our system. So that'll help with our understanding and approval, transparency for everyone involved who wants to see what we're spending on and then why we're spending that. And so I imagine this is going to be a bit of a moment for staff to adjust to, when it's been a shorter description and now we're asking for a bit more detail. So thank you, everybody involved who's going to be adding that detail in their expenses and adapting that new practice. But I have to say, I got real excited when I saw this email, because it's going to help all of us have a greater understanding and be more clear about what we're spending and why we're spending it. So thank you.
Yep, Councilmember Hahn.
Yes, I'm looking at these loans. You did good work on that. What is the $50 million loan we took from the state of Wyoming? Where does this come into play with any of this? And where did that money go? What is it to be used for? And I had one question on that. So is that something, that 50 million or whatever it was we took as a loan, is that something where we use a portion, do a job, and then pay that portion off, and then it's subtracted from the loan, and then we just keep doing that?
Yep.
So are we paying interest on what we have left, or the full 50 million that we're going to be sitting on 30 years?
Sorry, we do not pay that. Those are good questions. And I do have very long letters that I've been corresponding with the state loan or the state land and investment board,
Yes.
just to understand more of the process. One of the things that I think Lance and Shari did a really good job at is even on the interest rates, and I know that if you look to the last thing, it used to be at 2.5% on the older loans that are out there right now that we're making the annual payments on. They did get those lowered to 1.5%.
I saw that.
On the new ones going forward, I think they're going to try to give us, as far as I can tell, the 0.25%, which is extremely small, which is great. They also, from what I understand, I was trying to add up how they have in this, and I was trying to tie it back to Lance's fancy, his things that he had provided as well when I first started, because I'm trying to make sure what the engineers are working with and what I have the state loan and what I show, that everything's reconciling to each other. And it looks like we have, like right now on the CW 206 and the drinking water 259, those going through there right now are about 44 million, and there's 8.6 million that they still, and I got his email today, they still believe that they will forgive that. So that money would be, they're going to loan to us. We pay out, like, for instance, we go and we pay somebody to do work on Buena Vista.
Mhm.
We're going to pay them. We're going to go ahead and pay the contractor. As soon as we get that that's been paid, then I'm going to send that information, and the state loan board is going to then send us money to have that money. Once we start making draws, that's when it starts earning interest. So we don't do anything until we draw on the money.
Okay.
And then once it gets closed out, that's when they'll forgive part of it and then set it up for the annual payments. So we are paying 0.25% right now on anything that we've drawn, but it only goes off of, it only accrues from when we actually draw the money.
From that big portion that we
Mm-hmm.
took. So all these are previous loans, because I was noticing the dates.
Right.
It's a pretty good breakdown. You got good dates on them. and
Yeah,
everything.
these top ones
Yes.
are all previous ones.
Yes.
The ones down below have not been closed out. So
Right.
if you look at that, the street sweeper, I've been talking to them about getting that one closed out, and the McFarland clean water and drinking water ones. And then I think I talked to Lance today on the water meter replacement. Those will all be closed out in the future.
Mhm.
And we did put $500,000 just in case for anything we close out and might have an annual payment. I know that Shari always set up to pay a little extra on some of these loans too, to pay them down a little bit quicker if we have the resources, but we don't really know that until we get to the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. More good questions. Adam, we're ready for you to tell us you have nothing to add.
I have nothing tonight unless somebody has a question for me.
Any questions for Adam? Okay. And Rochelle?
Adam and I are in the process of reviewing for the 500th time the policy manual. My goal is to get that to you for you to start to review so that we can start having discussions about it. Really, the council's big decision will be overtime and how you want to handle overtime. And there's already been a preliminary discussion about that. Other than that, it's mostly just updating language, codifying on some level things that already happen, like American with Disabilities Act, stuff like that, putting it in writing. So that will be forthcoming. Also, Chief Wab a couple weeks ago brought me an example of an e-bike ordinance that there's been lots of discussions about getting that off the ground and starting that. So that will also be a future draft and work session discussion for council to look at and decide what you want that to look like.
Yep. Thank you. A question for council in terms of the what Rochelle was just referencing. Would your preference be to get it all at once, or is it easier to have a couple, 3 chapters, and if we have any questions, we have a work session agenda about that specific, rather than get, I mean, it's not as big as the police manual. It's like, 90-ish pages, maybe?
60.
Okay, yeah, but still, it's new information to a lot of folks, or we haven't seen it for a while. So would that be the preference, to get a couple of chapters at a time to be able to review, ask questions? Great. Okay, we can sure do that.
I have one question.
Yes.
I know it was just yesterday, so, but our discussion we had about the HSA, and I expect nothing to happen, in like 24 hours, but if there's an opportunity to share with everybody in a coming session, if there's any possibility for that to be modified, so that'd be great.
So just to fill in, I guess, the conversation for a wider group of people that might not have been privy to that, our current HRA policy where someone is with the organization for a year and then they're eligible to get the benefit of an HRA. So Councilmember Cassidy had his year anniversary with the city, and I had a conversation with him, and he wondered if there is a way, and we can certainly do this and add it to the policy book. It's a good time to, if somebody wanted to decline that, to create a line item within the employee world where that could be donated for employees that had extreme medical needs. So there would, in theory, be a creation of a committee that would review that. And if somebody had high needs, there would obviously be a criteria to go through that would sort of dovetail the Family Medical Leave Act, or, a certain expenditure level or something of that need, where an employee could apply and some funds could be distributed out of that HRA fund, for example, if somebody didn't want the money and they forfeited it to that account. So if council is interested in that, I can certainly draft some language with Adam, and we can include that as a section in the policy manual.
Yeah. I think that would be great.
Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions? Was I confusing? I could have been.
So is it like with the state, it's FMLA, so it's like family medical leave?
Yeah.
Basically, if you have a medical emergency or something with one of your family members, immediate family members, then that member will get paid to take care of that family member or go to the hospital with them.
So, and FMLA applies to the city, and I'm using that just as a guideline for when somebody might be able to qualify and apply for these funds. So in essence, let's say that the council very generously approves the HRA funds, and I say, I don't need it. So I want my money to go into this special pool, and I'm not going to take it. Then for example, and Christy has, an extreme medical need, or one of her family members that's a really high expensive cost. I know HIPAA applies too. So it's not really Christy, it's employee X. So she could apply to that fund and say, some details. And that type of criteria when somebody might qualify for FMLA leave might be something similar that would apply for evaluating whether or not payment out of that fund would be appropriate. I'm just throwing ideas out.
Great. Anything else? Okay. All right, let's move on to consent agenda. On tonight's consent agenda, so there's no separate discussion of these items unless a councilor requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered on the regular agenda. So up are two items. Item A, approve the May 12, 2026 regular city council minutes, and approve the May 26, 2026 regular city council minutes. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Hahn.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Moving on to section 9, new business action items. First up, I'm going to have to take a couple of breaths on this one. Approve and authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of agreement between governing bodies of Fremont County, establishing a distribution framework for the potential economic development tax associated with the proposition exclusively for commercial air service, public ground transportation, and emergency medical services to be placed on the 2026 primary election ballot for consideration of the qualified voters in Fremont County, Wyoming on August 18, 2026, provided that the agreement shall have no operative effect unless and until the qualified voters approve the proposition, election results are certified, and the tax is lawfully imposed and collected. Can I get a motion in a second for that, please?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Stubble with a second by Councilmember Cox. We had a pretty lengthy discussion about this before. Is any further conversation needed tonight? I see Councilmember Cassidy.
Yep. just some suggested or requested verbiage. I'm not sure how to step through this, but for an amendment to section 8, subsection I, it's the audit access to records component that you and I disagreed about a little bit. Trying to get to the same end state, just slightly different. So at the very end of that 8I subsection, the following verbiage. Annually, the service providers for emergency medical services, commercial air service, and ground transportation shall report to the parties during a public meeting. And it's just what we discussed, you and I, trying to get to the same outcome, maybe in slightly different ways. This verbiage, if added, would just require an annual report from them to us in a public forum.
Sorry, can you say that verbiage one more time? Because that's not in the document we have before
Yeah,
us.
this is just something that we'd like to add if we could. It would be as written as such. Annually, the service providers for emergency medical services, commercial air service, and ground transportation shall report to the parties during a public meeting. That's what I would like to add to section 8I. And it would be at the end of that.
So not in instead of, but in addition to.
Correct. Yes, it's
Okay.
additive. Yep. Sorry about that. It'd be at the very end of that 8I.
Okay.
It's just
Got it.
one added sentence.
Okay. So I think what you're doing is making an amendment
Yes, ma'am.
to that. Okay. Can we get a second on the amendment?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment?
I
Mayor?
do. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Councilman Cox, please.
My question would be, since it's not our document, how does that amending process work? Because then if we approve the amendment,
It would have to.
then
go
it would
back-
have to go back.
Correct. So City of Riverton would have to go back and accept that amendment.
And then any other,
Those are the only
just
entities.
Riverton and us and the county? The county also have to, or have they not voted on
The
it?
county has not voted yet.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may, I'm in favor of this amendment. I'll detail some reasons why, but I did communicate with Mr. Butterfield from City of Riverton, and he indicated that it's possible for them to, if we were to make any changes tonight, to take those changes for Riverton to then also adopt in their July meeting. So I don't
Yeah.
believe there's an obstacle in
No.
process here. You know, I think
Definitely
we want to be mindful, and if he was mindful of this by saying early July for their meetings, that the goal here is to get this document in front of all the governing bodies, all the parties that are going to approve or disapprove, so that if it does pass, there's that transparency for the folks at the voting booth in August 18th. So like, here's how if the tax is going to be collected, you know, the parties would agree to distribute the money around.
Right.
So we don't want to wait on this too long, but I do think this is a important and impactful amendment. And so I think it's an okay delay. We'll take it back to Riverton in July, in my own view.
Yeah, appropriately. So, and I would add, it's not necessarily August 18th, but since early voting starts a month before, there is, while it's not urgent, it is time sensitive, I think is an appropriate way to do it. And again, for that reason, we want this to be an educational piece for the voters for that. So, okay, so we have an amendment. So let's vote on the amendment. Councilmember Cassidy.
Yes.
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 Okay, and now we need to vote on the document as a whole as amended. We'll start with you, Councilmember Han.
No.
Yes.
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 Okay, and that passes. Okay, next up is approved resolution 1387, amending resolution 1358, fees and utility rates for water and wastewater service for July 1, 2026 to June 30, 2027. Get a motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Before we get further into this, Lance, can I ask you to explain? This is a question that's come up in our conversations with constituents. I think some of us have heard this information, but not all, and not folks in the audience. So can you help explain what the base rate covers and why that's important in the process?
Sure, I'll do my best with that question. And so that's our debt service, which are our loans. And so we divide that base rate up so that everybody's paying a portion regardless of how much water is taken. The 4,000 gallons we associate with that is just a volume for the base rate. So we've had people request like, hey, move that to 2,000. Well, that would move it to 2,000 for everybody and then trigger even more expense for the people who buy more than that, you know, and so they start paying their price per 1,000 gallon rate after that. So, you know, that's a amount that we assess to everybody on the water and sewer side for the money that we've committed in the past and loans that we're paying.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Questions for Lance?
I do. And I actually, this question has been answered, so I think this is more of a statement. In the document, it reads that you're allotted up to 4,000 for water, 2,000 for sewer, 2,000 gallons, 4,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons. And then you're charged a certain amount of overage per 1,000 gallons. So the question I had was what happens between 4,000 and 5,000? What's the cost? What is it per gallon? And just for sake of not doing public math, it's approximately 0.04, almost a half a cent per gallon overage. So you are paying overage even if you just use a gallon over, but it's a very minimal amount. I mean, I think it's like 0.04% or cent. Am I right in that? Am I saying that correctly?
So we're at $4.15 per 1,000.
Right.
And so you just break that down on the number of gallons if
Yep.
you're, you know, to a tenth or whatever it may be on that calculation.
So I think that's just a good picture. And that's the same situation for sewer because it reads the same way, 2,000 gallons. And then over that at 1,000 gallons is what was the rate? It doesn't, I don't have it right in front of me.
So $3 per 1,000 gallons. But remember that we calculate on the lowest usage time of the year.
Yeah.
For sewer. So this isn't when you're using your max irrigation to figure out how much is flowing through. This is when everybody's winterized and
Right.
we're calculating in the off-peak time. And so it's minimal usage time.
I think the comfort level for me is that I'm looking at it per gallon, which is a relatively reasonable amount of money with the increase. So, thank you.
Councilmember Cassidy.
Lance, why do you choose that path to when people are winterizing and it's a minimal use?
So that's when we can get the most accurate amount that's probably going right down the pipe. And so the majority of your household water usage during the time when you're not irrigating is going down a drain. And so that's where we can get our most accurate estimation as far as your impact on the sewer system.
Thank you.
Another more question on, so there's also within that document, there's payment arrangements for delinquency. And that is if that's happening or somebody's delinquent, the requirement for them to be up to, snuff is they have to pay their current bill plus their delinquency payments. And I think it was 2 months or something like that. Or just one current bill. Anyway, who monitors that, number one? And then do we find that to be a significant issue where we have a lot of delinquent residents or in delinquency? Is this a frequent problem and who monitors it?
I might be able to answer that because I talked to Danielle based on the same question being asked by the mayor. So our water clerk at the front desk, Danielle is keeping track of that. Cassell is keeping track of that, right?
Okay.
So Cassell will automatically charge you the delinquency payment and the interest rate. But after a certain amount, if it gets over, I gotta read here, 2 months or 250, no, 2 months or how much? $200, you can come in and make a payment arrangement and say, okay, I'd like to break that over 3 months.
Okay.
And so that's one thing that we offer. If you are and fit into our financial hardship rates, we have financial hardship rates for if you are 133% and below of the federal income levels, and clear up to 150% of the federal income levels. You could come in and get your entire year's worth of water rates discounted. So there's another avenue for them. During that time, I also asked Danielle to say how many are really delinquent. We had 4 that were over 1,000. 2 of those were deceased, so they were in liens and estate issues.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other 2, they were working to see if they would ever get paid or if they had to have a water shut off. So 4 out of 3,200 accounts.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And we have to issue shut off notices. I think we had 8. And by the time that this last month, and that was high for us. And so people are really great at paying their bill on time most of the time. So it's a small amount. And by the time that we reach that contact saying, hey, we're going to shut you off, most people go ahead and pay and run down to City Hall. And it's just usually I forgot or a mistake like that. And there's very few that actually get to that last phase of needing to turn people off. And then in the winter months, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't want to freeze people up. So work as much as we can if the temperatures aren't cooperating.
And I think too, for me, just because I've said this before, I would like to know what the trends are right now to a 7% increase. Are we increasing that by 7%? Is it staying the same? Is it reducing? Just as we make fiscal decisions that we're mindful of those types of things.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. To answer that question, Councilman Cox, the difference between the 7% raise we did last year and this year, there's not an appreciable difference in the number of delinquent accounts. Okay. The other thing I want to let you know is when people come in and they have a hardship case, we also have another referral service at 211. So we give them the numbers for 211. They could go to the First Stop Center and get 1 month rent paid or their bill paid.
Yep.
So that we are trying to get the information out that we have a discount program. 211 has assistance programs and they have a payment plan. So there's 3 different ways for them to get current on their account.
Yep.
It seems like they're using them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And another thing, and Danielle is great about having conversations with these folks and recognizing who's struggling and using appropriate discretion and turning off the 10% delinquency. If someone's struggling to pay their bill, we're only compounding the problem literally by charging the 10%. And she's quite good at doing that for that. I will make a plug for anyone here and or listening. If you've not set up the online modern monitoring system for your water, do it. It's amazing what you can see, as well as last weekend, I meant to turn off a hose before I went to bed. I didn't. And the next morning I woke up to an email from Metron saying, hey, you had really high water use. What's going on? And so a great service to have. I'm really enjoying the benefit of that. But
Quick comment, Mayor.
yes.
I'm having a hard time digesting this. You know me. It's applying a tax to the people. Or, not a tax. This is just 7% of a water bill. In recent research, I'm trying to figure out why, and this is a question. Every time I bring up raising these water rates, it's 7%. It's to do projects and complete them. When recently we got 2 going, correct? We got Buena Vista Online and we got Lincoln. Why are we paying 14 different engineer firms? In the last 14 months, we've paid 14 different engineer firms $2,772,131. That's in 14 months. That's from 1/1 of 25 to 4/30 of 26. When previous years, this is 1/1 of 2018 to 12/31 of 24. The total amount was for 13 engineers, $6,449,634. Why are we paying that many engineers and that much money? I'm trying to, it's hard for me to contemplate that when we have 2 projects going.
So
here's another thing. One of them was $174,983. That was from one of the engineer firms. That goes to Poco Aggie Park. And then we'll do another one, another engineering fee
$20,699 for Popo Aggie Park. So we're doing all this, yet we're wanting to raise everybody's water bill. Why are we paying 14 different engineer firms for 2 projects? This makes no sense. Can you answer that, anybody?
So, Lance, I think you're going to have the best at this, but I think for me, one of the things we're going to hear is the projects that we have lined up, those had to be engineered in order to apply for the external fund. So while we're tackling 2 of them right now, and remember that the community development block grant is paying 1.275 million.
Do we have
of
14
the,
different projects? In
uh,
this?
well,
I mean, we got them on this
we-
list,
Mhm.
but
and
you're
these
you're
are
pressed to do them.
but we had to have them designed in order to get the funding lined up. That's how we got the 44 million.
This is where I was getting
So-
at the last meeting, where we're paying millions of dollars in studies and not doing the projects.
So,
This is,
and-
we're project. Not
and we're-
one project. Not another project. So why are we
Yep.
paying all this stuff?
Lance, can you take a stab at that, please?
Sure. I think the studies that we have are a storm sewer master plan and a sanitary sewer master plan. So those are the 2 studies that we're trying to develop capital improvements off of. The rest of these all come from the master planning projects from your water development, and then the projects that we've listed here all have an engineer associated with them. At one point, you guys had one engineer doing all of your work. We've chose to distribute that over multiple firms and multiple projects so that you're not just sole sourced. And so perhaps if I had what you're looking at and you wanted a more in-depth explanation of where money goes, they're not studies, they're projects. And then these projects don't allow us internally to be the owner and the engineer. So when we have state funding or we get a federal grant, or we're using somebody else's money, like when we're getting the $8 million worth of forgiveness, they require us to have a third party who is on the site. They're observing, but they're also acting as the contract manager. So if something happens as a contract dispute between us and the contractor, that person reports. They also report back things like how that the contractor is paying appropriately, the federal requirements are being met. So during construction, that's a process. During design, that's a process. There's bidding. It's all associated not with study, but getting a project from cradle to grave complete. And unfortunately, if you're going to use, grants and somebody else's money to do that, then you're obligated to have that third party. And so we've signed agreements with these people. They're part of these projects as we move through them. 14 different firms. And I think perhaps you can get it to the mayor, and then maybe we can do it on a work session to. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are approving all the bills being paid every month, so we should know them. I've got a
Yep, Councilmember Kent.
But I'm looking out for the people. We want to take their money for the next 20 years, 7% on top of 7%, just to do projects.
Sure. And I think that gives you the opportunity to do these projects at the pace you'd like. What do you mean redo, like redesign? Uh-huh.
Could you turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I was talking loud enough they could hear me. Now they're really gonna hear me. No, so I'm just trying to, it just seems like it's this many engineer firms for, say, we'll say 4 projects. I'll give you 4. I don't know why we need 10 extra ones. Well, strike, that's probably flood mitigation, say. So that's, quite a chunk of change. I could read off, but I'm not going to. I'm just trying to figure out it seems like excessive spending on stuff that we're not utilizing at the moment. When prices of everything's going to go up, engineering's going to change, right? I don't want to drag this on because it's getting late. These people are sitting here, but
I mean, I think the intent on these designs is once you have them designed,
yes,
you wouldn't change them unless something changes. So they're shovel ready. And if you have the money, we should build them, and that's where I am, is trying to figure out, okay, as things get more expensive, can we run this through a different grant program? Like, we know that the $44 million isn't going to be enough, but you can't bypass the requirements of the engineering. You could look at engineering typically as 10% in design and 10% in construction. So an overall project of, any amount, you could take 20% of that. And we've seen engineers, like when we work with YDOT, as high as 50% of that amount. And we've tried to, reduce that down to, less than that, to stay within that criteria so that they're spending as little as possible, but they're still meeting the requirements as they're on the job. So, trying to be responsible with the money on the oversight, you're also probably looking at surveying, testing agencies, they all qualify on that list.
why do we have 2 different engineers doing Poacher Park?
So
What's weird is I don't ever remember that getting passed through council to pay, an engineer firm $175,000 for the park down there, and then I will say $20,700 for the park down there. I don't remember ever getting talked to about that. So where did that?
that's the grant for the entrance.
So it's a grant, but we have to pay that amount?
We pay and then get reimbursed. When we were talking about, sending things off, like we pay the upfront and you have to approve the payments.
How much reimbursement do you get back? Full?
On that one.
The park project specifically is a $1.275 million grant, and our engineering expenses were right around $400,000. The industry standard for design, getting a design set of plans, is about 12% of your project cost. So we currently have $50 million worth of SLIP grants. 12% of that is $6 million. So just that's the industry standard. For construction management, like Lance said, we have to have under these federal grants, we can't inspect our own jobs. So to have that oversight is between 8 and 10% of the total project cost. So know that 12 to 20% of the project cost you're looking at, if it's a $1 million project, 12 to 20% of that is engineering design and engineering oversight as required by the grantee.
This is me being transparent. I want the public to know all this stuff. And the other thing I want them to know is grants isn't free money. I want you to understand that. Just because they're saying grants doesn't mean we're not paying a portion of that. So when they're raising your water bill 7% for the next 10 years, I hope you remember this, me saying this. I'm having a hard time with it, man. 14 different engineer firms. I think the park, not that important. Streets, probably a little more important. Sorry, hate to drag it out. I'm done for now. That was my soapbox moment.
Thank you. Councilmember Cassidy.
Just some comments, and I'm going to try to zoom out in a way. Just bear with me here on this. I think, for lack of a better term, right, and this is a very inflammatory way of putting it, but I don't know how else to say it. There's forever there's going to be arguments about generational theft in every nation and every time period where we collapse our spending and then we transfer that responsibility to the next generation. Or we might complain that those who came before us didn't pay their fair share. That's a constant argument. That's a constant point of friction across generations. And I don't think that's something that anybody should try to solve or could solve. I think if you give grace to other people, maybe you can understand their circumstances and accept their decisions as the best for them at that time period. That's something that weighs heavily on my mind when we start talking about 7% a year for a decade or whatever it is. I would rather, and I'm speaking for myself here, I would rather be squeezed financially than my children, my grandchildren, and so on. I can't change the past. I can affect the current, and hopefully carry a heavier burden now, so that our children can profit and benefit from that. That being said, we have a responsibility to everybody in our community to be the best possible stewards of all of these funds, and to do the best we can for everyone involved to find efficiencies. I hear what's being said here, and it impacts me quite a bit because there's concerns about costs, right? If we ask ourselves if this is an industry standard in which we have no maneuver space, then we accept it as an industry standard, right? And we move forward with that. On the other hand, if there are places where we can gain efficiencies, we can debate that with a provider. We can talk about ways to lower the costs on behalf of our community. I trust the people involved in that to do that on the behalf of our community. Complete trust. I don't know anybody that I deal with in this building who is flippant and disregards their fiduciary responsibilities. But where we can, we do the best we can to be efficient with the money that we have, because we don't have enough to do what we need to do. So again, thank you for giving me time to move away and kind of zoom out. But if we have to carry a heavier burden for our kids to carry less, I think that's the right thing to do. So.
Thank you. I hadn't heard that phrase of generational theft. And much as I appreciate this conversation going into our engineering and bigger projects, I'd love to bring us back to this particular resolution about the water schedule, and at the same time ask, would it be beneficial for council to be able to have a work session, understanding the better pricing per the projected projects that we've got? Would that be of interest to folks?
Absolutely. And apologies here, but when we spoke last about this and we said, why 7%? Why only one option to us? Does that ring a bell, Lance? And to maybe, do 7, 6.5, and 6, and then expose to us the risks that we face if we were to choose 6, right? If we could go forward in a work session and talk about that, and you could tell us why that's a bad idea, and we just throw it in the trash. Or you say, hey, I can give you 2 or 3 options, and then future councils then can say how much risk do they want to accept amongst those 3 options. I think that would probably cause more workload for you, but it might speak to some of the concerns that have been brought up today. If we could do that in a work session, I'd be really pleased with that.
Anything else? Yes, Councilmember Stubble.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to also comment, just given the gravity of the decision we have here. I won't be nearly as eloquent as Councilman Cassidy, but I'm in favor of this also, and I'm deeply mindful and want to express a lot of care that this is having a 7% for water and 9% increase on sewer is going to pinch some of our households. It's going to cause some concern and some rebudgeting for people, and that makes me uneasy, frankly. Right, that is not comfortable for any of us to say. But I know I would rather pay today as well, so my children, my friends' children, our neighbors, people I don't even know, don't face failed systems that will be even more expensive in future years than they are now. The costs now are astronomical, but if we don't do it, it's a question of, if not us now, then who then? Them. And it will be more expensive. Things are not getting cheaper. These projects are not getting cheaper. We have 8 now, I'm counting with what we finished, queued up, and we've asked experts. We have had our staff experts, we've had outside experts come in and say, how do we prioritize where our aging systems that we've been ignoring for years, or haven't had the chance to, had the funds to address, or haven't had the, ability to address for all the reasons that now they're at risk of failure. And so which one's our highest priority? Where do we need to put our money? And what can we ask that is a reasonable, hopefully reasonable and not too painful increase now for folks to pay their way now, instead of asking our kids to bear that future catastrophic cost when those pipes fail. And so we have relief programs available if we need to adjust those in coming years, because let's be clear, it's 7% now. We've done this in previous years, starting in 2023, the water master plan, to run these calculations and get these projects covered is 7% for 10 years, and then it comes down to 3%. So we have many years of this debate going forward, and moments to say, gosh, let's reconsider. I feel like my time is up, clearly. I'm done. It is not an easy decision. That's where I'll summarize and land. But I have some ease and comfort in saying it's our job and responsibility now, so that our future Lander citizens and residents don't have to bear an even greater cost, because we decided not to today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That's a nice way to frame that. And I'm on a much more pragmatic level of, this is also why we're in this predicament and our roads are in this predicament, because previous iterations of this body did not make these plans. So thank you for the conversation all around. It very much appreciated. I'm going to call for the question on this, starting with you, Councilmember Cassidy.
Yes.
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 No.
Okay, motion passes. Next up is approved resolution 1388, the City of Lander fee schedule 2026-27, a resolution replacing resolution 1359. So we've likewise had work sessions on this. We gave staff a bunch of feedback. They did quite a bit of work on it. Do we have any questions about the fee schedule? Yeah, Councilmember Cox.
Well, I just moved to approve.
Oh,
Resolution
yeah, thank you.
1388.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
And seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Now, conversations about it. Sorry. Anyone? Okay, sufficient with our previous conversations? Okay, we'll call for the question. Councilmember Hahn, we'll start with you, please.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. Okay, so it falls to me, and I'm going to say yes on that. So it does pass. That. Okay, resolution 1390, authorizing open containers on July 4th within the Lander city limits. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Stupel,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Hahn. Any discussion on this? Questions?
Like Councilwoman Cox, because they'll say the same thing. Your turn this year, I think.
I mean, we can,
Call to be prudent.
this is, always been a source of contention, for me personally. And I remember there being a group of kids in front of us years ago. I don't know if anybody, Dan would remember, probably, where they'd asked us to not have open container on the 4th of July. And a council member at the time, I can't remember who it is, said, well, it's our tradition. And since then, open container has been something that has been a concern of mine. And I don't think it's our tradition. It's something that we allow. It's not necessarily a tradition, if that makes sense. It's met with considerable backlash, and those kids were essentially laughed out of the room. I wonder where they are now. I don't remember what year that was, but anyway, as a result, I'll be voting no. I have in the past, and I will again today. It doesn't, however, change the fact that people drink and light fireworks at their home. We have no control over that. They do that. Or
on private
on a
property.
private property. That is also something that happens. But I do find great concern in the alcohol consumption on the parade, where we find it to be the most dangerous for our kids. And so as a result, that's going to be my vote, but certainly is a reflection of a broader conversation.
Thank you. Councilmember Cassidy.
There's been a couple of very compelling conversations that have happened, recently, and, um, points of, agreement and disagreement, and your statement there of concern, and I would like to hear some of those from you. I mean, if you would be willing to share those. I think that, this is something that our community, there's a point of debate, there's a disagreement about it, and it's worth discussing. It's worth debating and hearing the points of view, especially from the folks that are perhaps up here who will be the vote, those who vote on it. Before I kind of hand it over to you, I'll say that in the conversations I've had, there were some very compelling arguments, and points, like I said, points of agreement and disagreement. And I fall pretty much on the line of individual agency, and responsibility and risk management. Those are kind of the pillars for me. I don't want to pull away or take away someone's agency and their ability to make their decisions. And I also understand that we have a responsibility to mitigate risk, as a whole, as a community. And there's been some discussions to move down that path, with the police department and other people in the community. So I'd love to hear if you'd be willing to share.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman Cassidy. I think I'm with you on personal accountability and responsibility. My hesitation with the 4th of July parade is that what you permit, you promote. And so, listen, I've partaken in the open container allowance many a times and many a years. And I've also not. And I just think that there comes a point where, and it's not favorable, but, I'm not running this election term, so I guess I can say it's not a favorable thing because it is really something that we've done for many, many years. But if you think about it, you logically think about what it is. It's a kegger on Main Street for everybody that's attending, and it's a blast. It's an absolute blast. It's what makes Lander unique. But it's a blast a lot of times for other reasons too. And it doesn't have to be alcohol generated. And so I think there's, it's a blast for the people that drink. I mean, if you think about for years and years, Ace Hardware had they had sober bleachers. And I was raised LDS. And so my family, when they would come visit, which I always encouraged them not to, we would go sit in those bleachers, and it was fun. We had a good time. And it's certainly possible to do so. So I just, it's just always just running the treatment courts over the course of the years and how hard it is for people to be around it, and that you essentially can't attend a public parade in fear that you'll relapse or that you'll return to use or any of those types of things. So it's just been something that personally I've not agreed with for years, and something that I don't support necessarily, even though I've done it.
Thank you. Yeah. Other comments? Councilmember Hahn.
Gosh, I feel like it's a large lack of adult responsibility is what we have. But it's also, and I appreciate everything you say, sir, and I never go against, I believe in your thoughts. I do. But it's also a large revenue gainer for town, and I know what you're thinking. Trust me, I understand. But I think it's a large revenue gain for the businesses in town. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't, but I don't want to rob an establishment of possible financial gain. It is one of the largest days in this town. We all know this. And you're going to have irresponsible people no matter where you go or what they're doing. You have that when they're not drinking. People do stupid things, unfortunately. But this one, I agree with everything you're saying, but it's just one of the, I can't do it to the businesses, you know?
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I really glad for the robust conversation on this. It's increasing over the years that I've been in council. So I think that's important because I think where I've come in years past, and I'll say again this year, is I do hear the verbiage used, Councilman Cox, of it's a tradition. It's expected to always happen. And I want to say that for me, it's going to be evidence-based of it's an allowance that we grant every year. So I'm glad we reassess it every year. It's not a standing, resolution or authorization, because we should be able to adjust given changes in the community, right? Given community desires, given what degree of incidences are we seeing that could be tied directly to this. And so some of us on council will recall, after the July 4th, we asked our police chief, tell us how that went. How does open container, do you have concerns with the open container resolution? Do we see things tied to it? And I don't yet see the body of evidence for me to say, okay, this is directly tied to an unsafe community. Perhaps that's growing, and I want to keep, assessing and understanding that as well. And I think it's important to break this down to, we're saying open containers on, in public venues. There's a great deal of drinking that happens in private venues on the July 4th as well. So really, I think we're talking about the parade, the Rotary barbecue. We already have an open container at the park anyway. And so I'm trying to sequester this. Where is this actually applying? And the parade safety, as we heard from our chief tonight, is an increasing concern, right? We have, managing candy being thrown, kids running into the street. We talked about brought this up so well in previous years, Councilman Hahn. The parade safety for me is the key question here. And for me, then the decision to say yes or no to this piece of it, of do we have evidence this, decreases safety at the parade or throughout town and other public settings? Not yet, but do we need to have other stakeholders involved in that conversation? Absolutely. So I look at the calendar right now and think, gosh, 2 weeks in advance of July 4th is too late to implement, explain, or hear from everybody involved. The parade safety has got to be a conversation with the parade organizers, where we ask for a degree of change, perhaps, and a degree of partnership to enact some greater safety mechanisms, instead of it just being on City of Lander while that continues in any kind of unrestricted fashion. So I come down to, for me, it's not a given. It's a thing we're going to debate every year. I'm going to look for evidence and data that this is becoming, increasing the lack of safety in town. And I think it's a conversation to have well in advance, of the actual event too, with other people involved. Thank you, Mayor.
Good point. I'm glad you brought up the coordination with the parade folks, and they have been very willing to partner with us. So it's been a number of years since alcohol was not allowed to be handed out from floats. That was absolutely got to put the kibosh on that. In this year's parade form, it very clearly states that anything being passed out has to be done from folks who are not on the moving vehicle, has to be done from the side. And I absolutely agree with all of that. So I really believe we have good partners in that regard for it. So, yeah. Any other conversation about this or call for the question?
A couple of comments. After speaking with a resident here, I talked to the police department, I talked to the hospital, and one of the senior doctors there that I know, he said that the night of the 4th and the 5th is all hands on deck, and the busiest time of the year for them. So that might serve or help to serve as your data point. There was a comment made earlier about the open container law allowing on public ground, and that's a very significant distinction for me. It doesn't stop all activities across the community, right? It restricts it only in very specifics. And those spaces are very likely to be in the minority. Right? So that really impacts me, right, quite a bit in what you said there. I do have a question in here in that it has been approved over how many years in the past? Could anybody estimate, right? Decades, perhaps? Right. Yeah, decades, right? And we have it on our agenda now just a couple of weeks in advance. Us putting it this close to the execution date might be an error that we could change in the future, to allow people maneuver space based on decisions we make, instead of assuming that it's going to be approved because it has been approved for decades, and then us correspondingly assigning it onto the agenda in a time period that makes it very challenging for us to communicate that, allow them to change whatever they're going to do. So I think I'll be a no. You know, some of the comments that you made were impactful. I think that were it to not pass, I would like to know how we're going to enforce that, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad you brought up the points about speaking with emergency room personnel, Councilman Cassidy. And I'd also reiterate what, for me, what I'm basing the decision on is the activities during the parade, because I have no way to determine those evening activities are likely on private property where we have no jurisdiction and we're not going to change behavior. So I I understand folks would make an argument that people start imbibing alcohol at the parade, but whether they start at 10 or at 12 when they get home, that's the behavior I don't see changing. So for me, I look at, are we seeing problematic behaviors during the parade? And again, for me, I'm not seeing that evidence base that during the parade specifically, that's not happening. Uh, again, folks, I agree, folks have personal responsibility and personal agency. And I don't have the facts or data, but my hunch is the uh, less desirable behaviors are happening on their own in their private residence, and we cannot affect that behavioral change.
I would disagree with you on that in this one very minor way. From talking to the hospital, you know, I think that the comments that they gave me aligned to what you said. You know, that some of the bad outcomes happen at home, perhaps, right? Not out on the sidewalk. But where do they start? You know, um, again, I'll go back to my very initial comments about agency. I believe very strongly in individual will and agency. But if they start drinking on Main Street, that has a unmeasurable effect on what happens at home. None of us could determine what that is, right? So if we were to take a very small percentage of our geography, which would be public space, and we were to reduce that to protect our community, as you said, I think we could still allow people to exercise their own free will while protecting our community in a way that we cannot measure, but we all probably know will have an impact. So,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Hahn.
With the utmost respect on your comments, let me remind you, we voted yes for Wild Iris to drink on Main Street, Knowles to have their big party right here. Lander City Park just had Brewfest. It's real close to the 4th, you know, and I hate to choose those groups, which are, you know, they are groups of people that go there. And I understand this is a large scale. We have people from around the world that come to this. And that's what makes Lander Lander. And it shouldn't be revolving around alcohol, which I hope it's not. You know, I hope a lot of it is fireworks and the, you know, socializing between people, but you're going to have alcohol. This one, you know, it's real close to the time we voted yes on other things, you know, and it was pretty unanimous on the other things. So I hate to separate one thing from the others and vote no on something versus, you know, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilmember Hahn. So, and any other?
and you
Yeah.
bring up a very valuable point, and I think that's exceptionally important to bring up like right now, as you did. So I mean, we're all better for that in this debate. I'm not a prohibitionist, you know. I think that there's a middle ground, and it's exceptionally hard to find that middle ground. And I'm going to get it wrong in most cases, right? But I'm going to keep trying to sharpen up my ability to discern. I think what impacted me deeply in this discussion was your comment about private property. Like of all the things that you said, you know, it's like, hey, this is public. That's all we're restricting, right? We're not being prohibitionists across the community. Rather, we're saying in this small portion where we expose our community to high risk from kids getting injured, running out the street, and people pre-gaming and it getting a little wild and crazy, right? We're trying to mitigate that risk. If you want to go home, I live a block off of Main. If you want to go home and drink over there, you can do that. So we're not approaching it in a prohibitionist way. We're just perhaps mitigating risk. It is really hard, like you said, with these other events that have been recently approved. But thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
So other discussion, or can we call for the question? Okay. Councilmember Han, we'll start with you, please.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
And once again, a tie, and I am likewise going to be yes, for those reasons of, I want to see the data, and I believe it would negatively impact our businesses that have anticipated this being part of their day. So it does pass. Thank you. That was awesome discussion. I really appreciate that. Okay. Yeah. Next up, approve and authorize the mayor to. Oh, yes, Councilmember Cassidy.
With
Sorry.
the next thing, can we just take a note that we move this further left on the calendar next year?
Yep. So noted.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Item E, approve and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the University of Wyoming and Lander Parks and Recreation. Could I get a motion in a second, please? So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Regine, I think you've got the info on this from Ann. Oh, nope, Lance is going to be their person. Okay.
So this is a fuels project for McManus Park. And so the University of Wyoming will come in with a crew if we sign this agreement, and they will thin up the trees, remove all the shoots that are problematic. We had this fire within that park a few years ago. This is not a grant. This is out of our regular general fund budget, and this is $15,000 to get this crew in. They'll stay in McManus Park, so we'll shut that portion down while they're doing work on both sides to keep everything safe. They'll camp. To me, this is a very cheap and reasonable cost to get this work done, to thin this out and protect it from fuel loading.
Yeah, very much a number of constituents have expressed concern about McManus Park and fire being able to come down Valley for that. So
Just a point of, so when I was reading the information, one of the things they said is that their scope of work would be included in attachment A. There was no attachment A, and their budget wasn't super clear. I mean, it said 14,000 and whatever it was, 400 and.
So there is an attachment A scope of work in the packet. It's page 59.
Oh, you mean in the whole packet?
Yeah.
That's interesting because I was looking at the, it's okay. At the attachments that I got just in the drive. And I
Yeah.
could not find attachment A anywhere. And the budget was not, it was not clear.
And so I think that it's just under other, and I agree, that's not
Yeah.
really clear. And so we could probably do a better breakdown in the future because they just marked everything as other and then 714.29 as their other costs. So I think, yes, we could, if we partner with them in the future, we can
Just
we can
ask for what
a
the
better breakdown of
clarification is. Yeah,
cost.
it's not a problem because it's not the budget. You didn't do the budget. The University of Wyoming did.
Correct.
Thank you.
Lance, I do have a question for you. So, on a Firewise grant, from the experience I've had, they cut it and stack it. Are they moving it as well in this one?
Sorry, repeat that
Are they
question.
going to move? Are they going to remove it after they cut it and stack it? Are they bucket and stack it?
Yeah, everything's being taken
Complete.
out of the area. I believe this is start to finish, all
Okay.
on their backs doing the work. We're
Okay.
going to provide trailers,
Yeah.
and we provide some of the materials and hauling things away. But
On the
we're involved on that part of making it disappear, but not
On the
getting it-
Firewise grants I've seen, they were just stacked and not moved. It was up to the owner, I guess you could say, to move it. do you know what's going to happen with that wood? Can we donate it? Can we hold it for citizens here who might need it? Like, I don't want it to end up in the dump, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when it ends up at the dump, it gets burned,
Yes.
in the fuel loading. And so I think we could offer people this, but we've had some fuel loading piles that have sat around for a long time, like the stuff that we left in front of the addition to City Park
Yeah.
that never did get removed. So I
Right.
guess if you have somebody who's interested, maybe we can have Ann post, hey, if you would be interested in this, we can offer it, but I don't want it to sit around and become
Yeah.
a problem either.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Not in situ, like, move it somewhere, have it up kind of where the sand is up the hill, for sandbags, put it wherever you would think would be the best, most appropriate for then people in the community who need it in the winter can go and draw on it and draw it down.
Yeah.
If there's an option to do that.
As we reduce some of our asphalt piles, that might open up some space. So
Yeah.
we'll
Okay.
consider that. It's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Okay.
That, Councilman Cass, that's a great idea. And the church up Sinks Canyon has a firewood project. So I wonder if that would be an appropriate place if they would be willing to take it and use that to stock their supplies.
Yeah.
So,
Good
something to
ideas.
think about. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, discussion?
Mayor, I do. I'm struggling to understand. Lance, could you help me with the involvement of Wyoming Pathways and Mike Kusick in collaborators and project roles? Talks about being the on-site supervisor and primary point of contact for the Wyoming Conservation Corps, which is who's actually doing this, not University of Wyoming, of course. Well, the same, but yeah, just for clarity, it's a Conservation Corps. Tell me more about that. It's not my understanding of the
So
Pathways mission or involvement.
yeah, we made contact because we were looking at the possibility of trail building in the new park. And so the original project, and you guys will see this later in an upcoming lore grant that we did receive, was the University of Montana is coming in to build trails, but the University of Wyoming was interested in doing a project too. And both of those contacts were made through Mike saying, hey, these guys would be interested in coming in and doing work for your town. So that's how we made contact. And then the supervision part of this doesn't mean that I have to be out there or Kevin has to be out there, but that comes as part of the project.
Okay, so you do, Mayor, if I may, you believe there's a benefit there to not have a staff person be the on-site supervisor, that this is more efficient in your view to have a third party between us and the Conservation Corps?
It doesn't cost us anything to have
And that was my next question.
that
Yep,
third
okay.
party. And
Okay,
so
great.
that was the benefit. It wasn't going to take Kevin or my time to be there overseeing the work and making sure that it's done appropriately.
Okay. So can I just clarify that, but or say it differently? So none of our project total, none of our expenses going to be going to Wyoming Pathways?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good clarification. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, call for the question. Councilmember Cassidy.
Yes.
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 Great, and that passes. Okay, next up, approve S 26.02, Gannett Peak Estates Phase 2 contingent that the final plat not be filed until the infrastructure construction is completed, inspected, and improved by the city engineer or the owner provided the required collateral in accordance with City Ordinance 4-9-4.3. So can I get a motion in a second?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Hunt, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Regine, can you give us the oversight, and folks have questions? You bet. We'll have Regine on deck.
This is the standard subdivision process. The application was in order. The planning commission deliberated it, and then they recommended you guys for approval. The planning commission did their due diligence in the fact that they actually had 2 meetings to get additional information. So then they went ahead and recommended approval by the city council, and that's what we're here for tonight. The only thing that deviates from what you've seen in the last few years is there are 2 ways to guarantee to the city that you are going to perform on your subdivision infrastructure. And the one that we usually do is we don't allow building permits or occupancy permits. They go get a letter of credit or a loan, mortgage, or statement, give that to the city that says, I can bank this project and I will get it done. And then we don't give them occupancy permits until they get it done. The water, sewer, streets, curb gutter. There's 4.90. That allows a developer to go ahead and self-fund that, but we don't do any inspections or acceptance, and we don't file the plat until that inspections and acceptance are done. So it is following a process. It's just a new process before the council for how this developer is guaranteeing that that infrastructure will be done to our specs before they get a building permit.
Great. Questions for Regine about that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Han.
Yes.
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 Okay, that passes. Last item of the night, authorize staff to enter and pay bills and claims listed on the City of Lander fiscal year transition payment authorization on July 1, 2026 for expenses properly attributable to the 2026-27 fiscal year. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Cassidy. Christy, thank you for all the work you've lined up for us to help us understand this. It's a process we've done in the past before, but you are likewise seeking to increase our transparency. So help us understand what's different this year, please.
I think one of the biggest issues is just the timing of the second Tuesday of July. It's on July 14th. It's pretty late in the month. And you have some loans that are due on the 1st, and we want them to go mail a payment to them on the 15th. It was going to be another week. It seemed a little bit late. One of the other things also is we just wanted to be very transparent and try to capture stuff that's large dollars that probably need to be paid out for July 14th and bring it to you so that you would have the opportunity to ask questions before it's actually paid. The liability pool insurance, the $41,537, that literally was already approved by the council on May 12th. So really, it's just a matter of, for the next fiscal year, it's due on the 1st of July. So it's just a matter of saying we would like to pay that on July 1st and enter it into next period in July. But we probably don't want to wait till July 15th or 14th to get that payment out. The Cassell, the government, that is an annual maintenance support. I know there's long discussions that I've had, I think, with some of the council people about Cassell, and it is really, I was kind of taken back by how expensive that was as well. In doing that, I did ask Cassell for a breakdown. They did send me a breakdown of all the different segments of what makes up that 32,000, also how many users we had. One of the things I want to go through is like making sure, doing my due diligence, that we are using every single segment of that Cassell. Like, we're not paying for something we don't use. So, and 6 users, what are the 6 users? One of my questions to them right now was 6 users, but really we only have 3 users because it's really Danielle, Kevin, and I that are on there all the time. Rochelle has that, Lance has some, Shari has some, but they might not be on there very often. So do they really need to, is it 6 users at one time, or do I have to pay for an entire year if they only use it a couple hours a year? So those are questions of things we maybe do. I think as we go through and review things, just like I did last month with Zoom, where we found out that when there was an issue where it was hacked, then Zoom had an issue where I think we scrambled to do different types of things, but we've now found which one works best for us. So it really didn't make sense to renew both of those packages that we were having. So I am trying to get us refunded on one of those because it went automatically to somebody's credit card. So as Kevin and I go through and also try to provide you guys with better descriptions so that you guys can make better decisions, we're also trying to also look at all of those different things that I think Councilman Cassidy and I have talked about, which is, you know, let's pay attention to what those different things are, and let's go through those bills and make sure. So as things come about, we're going to start trying to work on those. It's going to be a slow process because we're also limited with people and time, but we're going to tackle those things as they come through. The other three are just the annual. These are all loans that have been out there on the books for a while. These are just the annual payments. They just happen to be beginning of July, and one's I think July 15th. But these are all loans that are out there. I should have I think when we get the loan payment from the state land, it's just like a one-page thing, and I literally just copied what they had on there. So I appreciate that I had somebody reach out to me from the public that said, or council that said, hey, we probably need more of information. Can you maybe put something together on that? So I did put together this schedule. And just to give you a background, you know, infrastructure is one of those things that's also on the strategic plan. So Shari and Lance, they kind of put together, here's $109 million, which that we kind of talked about when we talked about our budget, that we have where we have infrastructure projects that we've got to do. The top section of this long sheet, these are all loans that have been approved, that have been out there for a while, and those are the ones that we're making the annual payments on. The bottom half of this is the part that goes kind of with the other one that says funding sources, and it has Clean Water State Revolving Fund, 28 million, and it has the Drinking Water State Revolving of 16 million. That's the $44 million that we have to finish these projects that are in that section that's in the process of being done. From those, I verified with the state Land and Investments Board that they're going to forgive $8.6 million of that, and that the interest rate we're securing on that is 0.25, which is extremely low. So it was a good way for us to do a big chunk of our infrastructure and get an extremely low interest rate and to get a large portion of that forgiven. So hopefully I also got some amortization schedules and some other information, and then verified those with ones that we always had and updated them. So that's something that I could always be able to provide. I also encourage, if any of you guys ever have questions about bills or anything that you would need to want us to be more transparent on, you know, definitely contact myself or contact the mayor and let me know what that is, because I am always willing to try to give you whatever information I can possibly get. But I also am learning, so sometimes there's some hurdles.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that. Great questions. Councilmember Cassidy.
I do. Thank you very much for this evening. And if I can just ask maybe a request or recommendation is that I think it's fair to say that there's a assumption of inefficiency, right? Or a lack of due diligence, right? There's an assumption across all government, not exclusively Lander. And if we can do our best to take that responsibility very seriously and find those efficiencies, as you and I have discussed a couple of times, I think that's exceptional for everybody in the community. My request or recommendation would be to those little wins, like the Zoom example, if you can just write those on a whiteboard or something and keep a hold of those, because those are the pieces that we can then go back and say, you know, the dollars might matter, but what really matters is that we're tracking these efforts to be very diligent to find efficiencies. You know, some folks might be moved by the dollar amounts. People might just be moved by the fact that we can show that there's an effort and that it's at the front of mind on behalf of the community. So just a kind of a request or a recommendation that we keep track of these, so that, you know, we can push them out on social media, or at the end of the year or whatever, we can say this is how much we've saved by being diligent. So thanks.
Councilmember Hahn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The one thing I'm noticing is like, and I don't know, I'm not picking on you, sir. I'm just questions. No, not you, not you. You're not a sir. That guy at the end. Well, I'm noticing, so like we'll just pick one like wastewater lagoons. So this loan was taken out in 2012. The maturity date is 2035, but we still need work done on the sewer lagoons. So if we have an existing loan on the sewer lagoons, wastewater lagoons, sorry, and this isn't going to be, well, the maturity date's 2035. If we have a problem in the sewer lagoons, how do we mitigate that issue if we're already paying for a loan? Do you have to take another loan on top of this loan to make repairs? I mean, we're kind of compiling debt.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, this is from 2012. I mean, that's a long loan date.
Yeah.
And then we're already talking about having to work on the sewer lagoons again. So I mean, it's like a compiling debt. Like you were saying, we don't want to affect our children. There's no getting out of it, unfortunately. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
But yeah, just reading through this, I mean, it's like a never ending, it's scary to look at.
Yeah.
I agree.
Agreed.
And it doesn't compute, right? I don't think
Right.
we ever get ahead of the infrastructure as it's aging. I mean, the effort here has always been how do we reduce the impact locally as much as possible? I mean, in mind of not raising those rates, it's always been like, okay, where can we negotiate? You know, do we really need to alter and change the lagoons to a mechanical plant? So we're really lobbying strong to not have those changes that are federal mandates fall here locally, but a lot of times the rules of water, or I guess all the time, the rules of water quality fall on EPA, and then DEQ enforce those rules. So the ever-changing process is the ever-changing process that's put in front of us of new rules, new things to treat, weird things like microplastics and 1,4-dioxane and things that we didn't used to measure that all of a sudden become a big issue that are causing cancers or other issues within the system. So we don't want to have those come into the system and people drink them and then we can't discharge them. So you're right. You know, what do we do in the future? We try to solve this problem, but we're not building up a replacement fund in this. We're still just catching up, trying to pay for projects. It would be awesome if we had the ability to replace all that infrastructure and it was built up over time. But that's not the situation we're in. The alternative of not finding money to do these projects is it all falls locally, you know, and then we would be talking huge rate increases to run and operate your system on the backs of your customers. And I think that's unfair. I think the state is starting to recognize that that's a big problem. They're trying to get a handle on infrastructure amounts and how far behind people really are in different municipalities. We're trying to do what we can to stay even or catch up or be ahead of opportunities so that when they are there, you know, what can we get done? The alternative of doing nothing is what Councilman Cassidy said, which means that we're just passing the problem on to future generations to solve it then. So I don't have the magic answer here, but it is always been, you know, going to the state and using their MRG funds or using their, you know, other funds that are available, their loan funds. They have super low rates and opportunity, but there's attachments to those. And you're right that sometimes it's not fun to pay the extra cost of the engineering and other things. But if we want to keep rates low, this is a way we've solved that problem. But I'm hoping that the state at some point creates other opportunities for municipalities in the sanitary and storm water sections. And that's what they're looking at. Right now, there's really not much of anything there. EPA does have some opportunities for big projects, but you know, it's just like the fire truck. We'll keep trying, you know, as best we can to not have to pay that locally. But at some point, if the answer is no enough, you're going to have to replace that item and figure out how you're going to do it.
Yes, I fully agree with you. But my thoughts are focusing on needs, not wants. We tend to be revolving back to the park constantly. and the other park. And I feel if we utilize the funds that we're utilizing there, focus on paying debt in case we do have a bigger problem, leave the wants for the future to complete. I mean, I hate, I know you guys have a goal. We have this big master plan and all this stuff, but I feel if we focused on the more important things, I mean, having debt like this and then the possibility of compiling that on top of it, one on top of another, that scares me versus we need a new park. We gotta have baseball field. We gotta have this for, I promote everything for our children. Trust me. I don't want to take anything away from the kids in this town, but I also want our kids to have a town with working water and sewer that's not in the hole that deep, Because unfortunately, they're going to be paying for all these decisions and everything up here that we make now is passed on to the future, to the generations, if they can afford to stay. So I don't know. I feel we're focusing on a park where we're sinking manpower, sinking money into something when I'm looking at this and I'm seeing something way more important that when it comes to, I don't like that. I don't like owing money to anybody, so this worries me versus something that's more of a want. Cause that park, it's not going to generate revenue for us. I mean, you're going to have people come and they'll visit, and they'll go to the park and stuff, which is a form of revenue, I can say. But this here, I'd be taking care of. This is what we need to be focusing on is getting all the money compiled and focusing on paying this kind of thing. And
Councilmember Stu. Mayor, if I may build on that conversation. So thank you, Councilman Hahn, so much. I think, in my view, it's not park versus, paying for park versus paying for roads, because the amount of general fund money that the city's put into the park, either in land purchase or in design and planning for the Jefferson Street project, is so, in a way, it's almost inconsequential to what we applied it to here. So let's take, for example, the cost of the land for the Proposed River Park was $530,000, and the city, paid $115,000 of that. Private philanthropy, grants, federal funding brought that in. So if we put $115,000 and said no to the park, let's move that to city streets, that would be not some, but not no bite at the apple here, but it's not going to solve our problems on these projects. We've got grant awards for the Jefferson Street project for, which also benefits not just the park, but the residents down there on Jefferson Street as well. I mean, that's going to be major improvements. So, I mean, I think we can get a full accounting. I don't have all the numbers run here, but if we were looking at actual city funds of the park instead of grant money, private philanthropy, and other sources, wouldn't take a major bite out of, we moved it over to these roads or sewer, water projects, in my view.
Focus on the important stuff. We can talk about all this all night long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the wants. A park is a want. Needs are operational things that affect the public. You don't, I don't know all the man on all that, but like lining, doing stuff like that versus digging up old places, there's all these different things don't cost a bunch of work that would maintain it and make it last a little bit long. If it lasted 10 more years, then you could save this amount of money, putting on this, or investing in something that's going to better versus something aesthetic. that you can take your kids to. You got a few park, you got Northland Park, Sea Park, you got parks everywhere. And we're focusing on building this park over here, taking care of. We got a pool, might not be here. You know, I know what's going on with that. And so that's one less thing for, you know, but trust me, I think a park would be great. We already have functional parks, the lights, the streets, sewer, the water. That's the important thing. That's where work. Put the money into that. Worry about the wants to leave.
Mayor, I think that's a continuing conversation, and I'll say, yeah. Too longer, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, call for the question, Councilmember Cassidy.
Yes.
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 Okay, and that passes. So last item of the night is the move for adjournment. Move to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second that.
And we'll call for the question, starting with you, Councilmember Hahn.
Yes.
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 Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you again for a lovely conversation, and we will see you next week.
Mister, you always put me in the box.